Hi, everyone. My name is Nathaniel Dick, and this is an episode of the Falcon podcast where we talk about cybersecurity in an informal conversational manner. Today, I have David Sheidlower from Turner Construction here, and David is an expert in cybersecurity, and he's going to bring us some cybersecurity insights from the construction industry and just in the cybersecurity space at large. So, welcome aboard, David. We're so glad to have you today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to have a conversation.
We're glad to have you. And I wanted to start off by talking about cyber risk and specifically for construction or just what you're seeing. Are there any cyber risks for 2025 that you're paying a special attention to?
Yeah, well, so the baseline risks remain the same, right? The baseline risks are that the industry requires a tremendous amount of collaboration between owners, construction management companies, suppliers, and subcontractors, right? It's a huge team effort to put up a building. Construction projects are team efforts, lots of entities. They all have to trust one another. They exchange information, they exchange money, and so they just have to have a trust relationship. That creates certain risks in the sense that the cyber criminal can insert themselves into those relationships. In between them, we see a lot of wire transfer fraud, we see purchase order fraud, we see things like that where the cyber criminal tries to imitate or impersonate one of the trusted entities, to have a payment sent their way or supplies sent their way or things like that. That's the traditional risk that we see. The more exotic risks are the ransomware attacks, the data exfiltration. Those things are creeping into construction. We see lots of subcontractors, not the majority, but a number of subcontractors getting hit with ransomware, being unable to get to their drawings, unable to get to their computers or their systems, and that's very disruptive.
And do you see, so some of these risks are kind of the same things. Do you see any elevation of risk from like now that we have these AI tools, and we'll talk about that later, that are creating more sophistication? I know we've seen a lot in my industry, more advanced attacks. It seems like you used to be able to have a phishing email. You could kind of catch it pretty easily if you put it through a spell checker. But now some of these phishing emails are very sophisticated.
Well, they are, and that's on the individual attack front. I think what we're seeing, from what I understand from people who are more familiar with the dark web and the attackers' techniques than I am, they talk a lot about AI being used for target acquisition, AI being used for target analysis. The way that the hackers used to find who to attack was very manual, took a lot of work, took a lot of time. Now they're using AI tools to analyze both surface area, attack surface area, but also to profile companies, profile their targets, and provide them with usable intelligence. So that's a little scary.
Yeah. And I've heard like it used to take a hacker, a few days maybe to gather all that intelligence. And now it could be a matter of minutes. And we have a detailed threat report around a target. And that could be used for advantages and by cyber teams, but the hackers have it too. So definitely something everyone's watching. Any two specific, so you talked about the interconnected systems, and we're kind of getting into third-party supply chain risks. How does that work into a daily validation? Are you starting to see yourself and other companies ask for more validation in that supply chain processes? What are your processes for multi-factor authentication? Password complexity, is that starting to be more frequent in the construction industry?
I think it is. I think we use the software as a service applications between us and the people that we're working with, and their authentication protocols are sort of up to them. We require certain levels of cyber hygiene, depending on the job, depending on the contract, but also depending on the role, right? The guy who hauls away the dirt might not necessarily require as much security control as the person who's in there setting up the electricals. So a lot depends. In general, we want everybody to be safe on the job site, and we want everybody to be safe online.
Right. And two, I think what the government saw that with their contractors when they were giving blueprints to their naval bases to the lawn care company. And it's kind of goes back to a basic principle of, do you have a need to know the entire naval blueprint, or can we limit what we're sharing with our subcontractors too? Do we need to give them everything, or just what they need to see to be able to perform their tasks?
Yeah, no, least privilege access, business need to know. These are principles you pretty much have to live by. I have a background in more regulated industries, healthcare and financial services, and it's always been a matter of business need to know.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a government contract or whether it's a commercial contract.
The consequences are the same: data loss and disruption, and it's prevalent if you're making an F-16 fighter jet or if you're building a skyscraper. So what are some best practices that construct some of these risks of third-party supply or just cybersecurity risk in general?
The first thing that when we talk to anybody, the first thing we notice is that some subcontractors, especially niche subs in markets where they are by definition not that large, they're using IT service providers as their security providers. Right?
Yes.
That's okay. But sometimes the IT service provider isn't that sophisticated on the security side. So we'll have someone come to us and say, we've been hit with ransomware and we fixed it, we cleaned it up, and now we have MFA on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you mean your service provider didn't put you on MFA already? Right. The answer is no. They didn't. It's like, you're biting your tongue like fire them. No. Best practices for the cyber hygiene is MFA, good backups, incident response, and up-to-date patching on everything. Right. You have those four things and a decent security awareness training program for your people, you can avoid a lot.
You can.
Right?
It's the basics, right?
That's the hygiene. And if you're using an IT service provider and they're not providing that, they're not giving you the basic security services that you need. That's where some of this is maybe focal, because if you have Microsoft 365 suite, you can turn MFA on, you can turn multi-factor authentication on. If you have the Google suite of production products, right, you can turn multi-factor authentication on for that, and that doesn't cost anything extra. That's not an additional cost. That's a feature. You just turn it on, and when you have, say, an office and the IT service provider puts in a firewall, but the administrative password's never been changed, or and it doesn't require MFA to get into the administrative function of the firewall. We've seen firewalls hacked that way at some time. None of that costs money.
No.
That turning all that on doesn't cost money.
And you could argue that most of the 2024 data breaches were from something like that, an oversight, whether it be a configuration setting or default that wasn't configured, or MFA not turned on, the basics.
Going all the way back, it's not just 2024. You go all the way back to Heartland Payment System, which is over 10 years ago. They had a hackable version of wireless turned on, and a hacker sat in a car outside of their offices and just hacked into their Wi-Fi and stole all that credit card.
Wow.
And that's over 10 years ago. The idea of keeping things up to date, keeping things patched, goes all the way.
It really does. The basics. Now, kind of switching topics from the ongoing cyber risks, and the big topic is AI. How do we, as a construction manufacturing industry, and at large the cybersecurity industry, use AI, be careful of AI? What are some thoughts around AI you have?
Well, so the first thing is to understand that AI is a tool for people to be more productive, and if you approach it that way, then you think of it as any tool. You want to make sure there are guardrails around it. You want to make sure that you have some safe practices in place. Your data shouldn't be training models necessarily unless you've chosen to let your data train models, right?
Right.
Your AI is very good at creating drafts, but maybe you always should have a person looking at the thing before it goes out the door, right? So I know a lot of people who use AI to create drafts of procedures, policies, documents, emails, meeting minutes, all that stuff. But before it goes out the door, somebody looks at it. And I think that's still really, really important.
There's some user interaction built in. We're not just implicitly trusting AI.
You're not just implicitly trusting AI, and the understanding needs to be that the publicly available AI may not be appropriate for confidential and sensitive information. Confidential and sensitive information, the guardrails should be that it's only within your company's AI, within your company's data store, that it gets consumed. The last thing you want is for someone to go online to ChatGPT, to public Copilot, whatever it is, and ask for a piece of information about your company and get back proprietary data. Jacques Vallée, who was a computer scientist, French computer scientist in the 70s, he wrote in his book, The Network Revolution, anything that can be designed by human logic can be fooled by human ingenuity. And, that's just it.
That's a great quote. Yeah.
Well, it's just true. If you can think it, somebody can think how to defeat it. The way that AI is being used for behavioral analysis to find anomalies in data, to find anomalies in people's behavior, to find anomalies in emails, for example. It says, oh, you've never gotten an email from this person and now they're asking for money. That's anomalous. That's an alert. Those kinds of things. The hackers are going to figure out how to train your AI to think they're normal. They haven't gotten there yet, but they're going to figure out how to go low and slow into your environment and train your AI, your preventive control, to think that they, the hacker, are normal. Because that's the original impersonation fraud in the real world.
Yes.
Right? I'll show up with a construction hat on and a vest and glove, high-vis vest and gloves, and I'll come onto the site. And when no one's looking, I'll steal wallets or purses or whatever. Their AI is going to figure out how to do that in the cyber world. They haven't yet, as far as I know.
How do we balance that innovation with security? How are we thinking about that as cybersecurity professionals? My insight a lot of times is I think as security professionals, a lot of times we want to just say no, but we do need to balance that productivity mindset for business reasons. So how do we do that?
About governance and guardrails, right? It's about a recognition of the risk. Construction. The great thing about working with construction people is that they really do understand risk, right? They know what it's like to have a human being 20 stories up on raw steel, and they know that that's a risk, and they know what that's like. And so you can talk to them about risk, and they understand that risk isn't abstract. Risk means negative outcomes if things go bad. So as long as you're talking to them directly about the risks and how you're seeing them, and you're realistic about what their business requirements are, you can get to governance. You can get to, okay, we need to control this, but we need to do it safely and securely, but we also need to get stuff out of it. And it works. It really does. Construction people are great about risk.
That's very true. And I think another way we can do that is through collaboration. From this conversation, threat intelligence, and I did want to give you an opportunity to talk about the ISAC, and I know you're involved in that in the construction industry. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I'm working with John Cronick over at Tudor Perini. He's the CISO there, and you and I met in Dallas at a conference this past summer to talk about it. And ISAC is an information security analysis center, right? Information sharing and analysis center, right? So the idea is that, and the financial services industry has one, the manufacturing industry has one, the healthcare industry has one. The idea is we're not competing when it comes to information security. We're not competitors. We're actually all in this facing the same adversary. And if we pool our resources and we pool our efforts, we can put ourselves into a position where we're more secure together, right? We're just more secure together because we're not competing on being better at finding a phishing. We're collaborating on that. So what you do, what the ISAC model is we all come together, with legal agreements in place around being the non-competition thing, laying out exactly what we're going to talk about. We're working with the Business Resilience Foundation, which sponsors a number of ISACs already, and has a platform for that sharing. And we're trying to build a critical mass of companies so that we can start having quarterly meetings, regular events. For example, the software as a service solutions in the construction industry for Procore and Autodesk, Trimble. We'd like to do resilience exercises with them. But first, right? Do actual. What happens if what would happen if you guys went down, right? Let's talk about response to a cyber event, right? They put a lot of effort. Our software as a service providers put a tremendous amount of effort in their own resilience, but we don't coordinate it. We don't collaborate enough on how we would respond to an incident. The financial services people, they do resilience exercises with the electronic fund transfer system, with SWIFT on the European side.
Right.
They make sure their whole information flow is resilient. We could be doing that. And again, we could be sharing intelligence. We could be sharing threat intel, things like that.
That's really great. I know we've talked about it before, and it sounds like a really great opportunity. I think that is so critical in cybersecurity is collaboration, learning, and sharing information. So it's really great. And we'll put any links you want to send us in the podcast notes, and people can learn more by clicking around there. But thanks so much, David, for this awesome conversation. Really enjoyed having you come out today, and hope you stay cyber safe out there.
Thanks. Yeah, you too, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And I hope to hear comments on this. Thanks.
That'd be great.